I'm gonna begin this video off saying that this video is a monster of mixed emotions and spastic thoughts, so basically my love life, but more interesting to the common man. I also need to say that right out of the gate, this video is half of one video that was up into two videos. So, what originally was 40 minutes of the worst word salad at a vegan bar is now 20 minutes of at least a salad that your dog will eat. To give more structure, I'll explain the segments that I had made in order. The first segment is going to be directly addressing the hate and why I believe it to be a conspiracy by the Russian oligarchy, while the second will be a brief retrospective of the game from launch up until now, or the title of this video for the smart boys and girls in the audience. And with that, I suppose we should begin. No Man's Sky Next is the update that just got announced by Hello Games and will be for Xbox, PS4, and PC, all releasing at the same time for free, being released around the mid to late summer of 2018, or this year for those that are unsure at the moment. People have acted and reacted as a result, in the same way that ongoers watch a train crash occur while not realizing that they themselves are about to be involved with that car flying straight towards their face. The haters and fanboys are going at it is what I'm trying to say, and especially the haters. In a moment, I will preference the difference between what I am calling haters, as I know that's an air quotey term and a lot of people have disdain for it, and the rest of the people that have legitimate criticisms of the game, because as evident by just a small, simple look in any No Man's Sky comment section lately, you could actually mistake the game for the fourth horseman of the apocalypse the way people are talking about it. As an example, the type of comments I'm talking about are comments like these. I don't want to single anybody out, but a group of people made a comment collectively like this, that they were upset that Sean Murray used buzzwords like excited and ready to show things, in quotations, but the words or the sentence he exactly used was he was excited to show people and ready to show people what they were working on this last year. I don't think that's quite weird of somebody to do. I don't actually understand how you would have want him to have phrased it. Would you have wanted him to just say, update coming out, that's it? I mean, it's completely normal for a person to act excited for releasing something. Not saying that you have to get excited for it, but it's completely normal for that person to sound like that. It's just that a lot of the comments in question tend to fall apart and have about as much common sense as sticking your hand in boiling water to check the... As a brief sneak peek of what we're getting into here. Anyways, No Man's Sky had a very rough launch. Go figure. But you don't need me to point out the obvious there, even though I kind of just did with the whole inference on the go figure part. To put it easy pleasy, slice my kneesies, the game was missing key features promised by the dev team, or more singularly, Sean Murray, the head developer for the team. There, I've summed up about 90% of all the comments I've seen, with the other 10% ranging between suggestive bedding mother jokes and suicide prevention lines, ironically. Everyone understandably was upset at the launch and voiced their opinions and frustrations in many different ways. Some, understandably, by just selling the game or leaving it for the time being, or maybe pointing out flaws and features they could add in the potential future. Others, well, others decided to take things a little bit too far. Others had things like send death threats and harass anyone who had the slightest positive thing to say about the game, critiquing or not. But time passed, and people decided to get mad at the next rolling pebble down the hill, being very careful not to push the stones rolling in their way, as fear to not get trampled by the bigger ones, of course. If it seems I'm being a bit facetious, trust me, we've only just begun this long video. Meanwhile, for the next year, those who stuck with the game would be rewarded with infrequent updates and an understandably reclusive dev team, too afraid to come out of their shell as to not stoke the nerd flames again. Free updates, the updates I was referring to earlier, soon followed, adding some of the missing features from launch, and eventually, after about a year, the game was in a decent state. We'll get into the semi thing in a moment, or a little bit later. All you need to know for now is that there was a lot of things you could still critique post-update. I'm talking post-Atlas Rises, which we'll get into in a minute. You might ask exactly what I meant earlier by the whole hate versus critiquing thing, if the one comment I made wasn't a bit too on the nose about that. Well, if the boot fits, and my theory is correct, you need simply only check the very comment section of this video, or other No Man's Sky related videos, more like the No Man's Sky Next one since it's more recent, And you'll be able to see it's a cesspool of more rampant hate and yelling than your last book club meeting about Mein Kampf. Or people calm down and I will actually be completely wrong about this and there'll be constructive comments about the game in the comment section below, or none at all, because I'm a small channel. Either way, it's like these people in these comments I've seen are fresh from 2016, like they came through some fucking time portal or something directly to now, and they're still complaining about stuff that's currently in the game, or would not allow them to keep updating the game for free. A lot of notable one-liners are as such. This game is empty. Maybe at launch it was, but not so much anymore. There's still quite a lot of stuff to find and do. Or, they lied about X feature, while X feature is currently in the game. Or, they gave us an incomplete product, which they did. Agreeable, they did. That they also haven't charged you for past admission. Or the one that I seen recently with the next comments, which is, I should get the game for free, even though that wouldn't actually be fair to anyone who's stuck with the game, or allow them to update the game for free, as they've announced that they will do after this very update. And I sympathize with things like that the stuff should have been there at launch. I agree with a lot of games that do that, which we'll get into very shortly. But considering I haven't had to pay for any of the shortcomings they've done and they've admitted to them, I don't really feel the need to be as hostile as a lot of people I see are. And the thing is, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be upset about the missing features at launch. You really should be upset for any game. I'm just saying that you should look at their track record since then and what they've asked for in return from you. Hell, I'm not even here to tell you that the game is amazing or that you should love the game with all your heart, as many of my close friends and relatives that just don't find the game appealing to them. It's not an active enough game for them, or they just don't like the aesthetics or features. And I think certain people in the No Man's Sky community need to calm down as well in claiming that the game is fine now and there's no problems, as again, there's still a lot of broken and unbalanced features that would make any insurance claimant die of stroke. I guess all I'm saying here is that there's a difference between critiquing something like Owlboy over here and blindly following a trend like cryptocurrency on the other side. Most of the people I see in these quote-unquote hate comments specifically attack people that like the game just off the basis of enjoying a feature or something in it, or the game itself without dated information, or literally have not even used a brain cell to think about the game since launch. That's my problem if you need any type of clarity on it. And let me get this out of the way. Did Hello Games mislead the audience of their game regardless of the fact that people had unrealistic expectations on some things? Yes. 1,000 times yes. If you're a fan of the game at all, stop acting like this isn't true, as there is evidence to prove otherwise. If you truly care about this game, you need to accept that as a fact, because it is. Meanwhile, everyone that's currently leaving those hate comments, not critiquing, as again I've stated the difference, maybe there's people just interested to see on what they've done in the game since launch. And because I like inflating my arguments with information I generally don't need to inflate them with anyway, I'm going to interject a little comparison here between how audiences dealt with certain games over others. Notably, Destiny, since I really wanted to love this game, but Bungie has proven to make me hate it and hate them even more, with every step. Now you might say, with your fingers poised on that keyboard ready to smash that enter button and send me to the toxic underworld that is the YouTube comment section, they're not even comparable gameplay-wise, which I completely agree. One is an FPS space sim focused on exploration and slow-paced fighting and other stuff and exploring, while the other is a shared world FPS focused on looting, grinding, and, more shooting. Because Destiny 2 had a freaking boner for that crap. What I'm comparing is the marketing and the lies both had, and which I would argue one wasn't worse than the other, especially with how they've dealt with it since. Destiny 1 boasted a robust story with meaningful content, trading, great characters, a variety of locations, and more classes. More than 3 is what I'm talking about. Well, what did we get? A half-ass shooter with half the content missing, and promised features missing from the game. And even past that, Bungie has never admitted fault for any of what's happened with Destiny 1 and its launch. But hey, Bungie was a notable studio, and people were okay with having the shit waterfall outbreak on their faces, poised to take more in the mouth. And what's better, the waterfall kept going until the release of the second game because they kept charging for DLC and added microtransactions in the second expansion. All of that to fix a broken mess of a launch. And then Destiny 2 released. Admittedly better presentation than the first, I have to agree with that. But it then suffered from the same exact problems, in fact worse problems than Destiny 1 did, with the content becoming even more stagnant very quickly. What's worse is how everyone reacted exactly the same way to Destiny 1's launch, by just simply hushing up and not really saying much. Meanwhile, people in their communities were actually trying to reach out and say, hey, there's problems with the game, and getting shunned and ostracized by their own community. How nice. As a tangent real quick, I'm actually kind of worried this might happen in No Man's Sky very soon, because I see a lot of people very complacent with some problems I'm going to point out in a moment. Sorry, just had to get that off my chest. Whew, gotta bring the woosah back from that one. Sorry, that small little rant there. Not to detract any more from this video than it already is. But again, it was just a simple comparison between how people have dealt en masse with one controversy over another, while one has gotten considerably better and they have admitted to their faults, Hello Games in this place, still getting major toxicity while other people still play Destiny and continue to act like nothing is wrong. However, I will admit that the community is actually coming together in this case, in Destiny's case, and actually starting to notice a lot of the BS, so good on you guys. Hopefully you can make Bungie actually do something smart for once instead of ripping you guys off at every chance they get. Because I swear, if the shooting wasn't between half decent and shooting at the broadside of a barn at any interval of time, the player base would drop more than a porn star with a wad of cash, and you can quote me on that one. This whole rant here should not scare anybody, or I doubt anybody's really scared by this little rant, but no one should feel discouraged to actually critique the game. You can critique anything you would like. That's obviously the right of any person to do. However, if you have problems with the current build of the game, I would hope that you at least stay somewhat up to date with a lot of the problems. It's simple to ask a question like, hey, have they added X feature? Or, hey, have they fixed Y feature? That's an understandable question, and hopefully you don't get a lot of toxic people that are in the No Man's Sky community to answer that question, because they can be a little bit overzealous with the "you should have known" thing, you know. What are you gonna do? Now is a quick timeline, rolling back time here in the very early parts of 2017, just after 2016. About 3 to 4 grueling months, I believe, after No Man's Sky's initial release, No Man's Sky got its first content update, namely called the Foundation Update, that added base building, economy systems, and new game modes, creative, polio, and normal. The modes everyone was currently playing was normal mode, for those that are curious. The second update, released another few months after that, I believe it was like 3, was the Pathfinder update. Effectively supersonic racing, except not having a potato with a stick pointing out of it as your main source of controlling the vehicle. A question I'm going to bring up a lot in this segment, because I'm about to elaborate on the updates in a moment, is this simple one. The updates might have been cool in concept, but were they good? Kinda. Most of the stuff in these updates either just added enough content to get to the next update, i.e. the Foundation to the Pathfinder to the Atlas Rises, or showed that Hello Games wasn't exactly as what people believed, as conniving as more they were incompetent, or at least short-staffed in some cases. The base building added was cool in concept and had a lot of good groundwork, but it never went far enough to truly be a worthwhile addition, for me at least, since the base building was more restrictive than a church in the South and always had the original round room as your starting platform, which made truly Dreamhouse building rather difficult. Another big part of the Pathfinder update was the whole planting resources aspect of the game, which allowed you to go out and forage for resources that you could then plant back at your home base to get better recipes for more expensive and more exquisite materials and technologies. It was supposed to add something to allow you to do in the base or interact with in the base as opposed to the cardboard, which we'll get into in a moment, but it kind of just made you go from staring at a wall to staring at a plant grow, which arguably isn't the most fun thing to do. Admittedly, you really weren't supposed to watch the plants or the walls. You were supposed to go explore. Meanwhile, your stuff would grow at home. You could come back and then have ready-made materials to make new recipes and stuff for money. Other than just making a lot of money, however, they were kind of just meh overall. They also had NPCs, but at this time, they were blanker slates and dry ice in a freezer, so Yeah, the modes they added were okay as staples, but don't highlight much as I stated because the base building was very restrictive, which made creative mode as redundant as Russian elections. And normal mode was already the mode you were playing on, so really wasn't too big a deal to just select normal out of the menu. And there was another thing. Oh yeah, Cancer Incarnate, also known as survival mode. Everything uses more energy and more materials. Things are more hazardous, and you are more susceptible to random bull, which makes the wonderful feeling of getting gangbanged in an alley or space for the unexplored all the more wonderful. Almost like For the King. Thanks No Man's Sky for reminding me of that game. Other than that, it was the main auxiliary objective of buying a freighter and such that would mainly keep people playing for the next couple months till the Pathfinder update. In the Pathfinder update, they added cars. I mean, it was good, minus the really bad requirements on other planets. So if you wanted to build a car on another planet that wasn't your home planet where you'd have the resources to make it readily available, it was kind of annoying to say the least. Was it meta altering? Kinda. Yes, in the way that it made things quicker and easier to farm, and ramping around was pretty fun, and racing with other people around in time trials or live was pretty fun. Other than that, no, not really. It was enough to keep you to the next update once again. However, in the form of things that people enjoyed that weren't even part of the game at all, Hello Games had spawned a very successful ARG. That's a alternate reality game for the uninternetified people out there in the audience. It was for an unannounced big update coming to the game soon. At the time, it was soon. But we find out it was around the release date of the original game in the next year was the release. It's a giant rabbit hole of sleepless nights and coding nightmares, so I'm not going to go through the ARG too much. All I'll say is that I don't believe that it was shoehorned in, as a lot of people want to theorize in certain comments. I wonder what comments I'm talking about. Similarly to Destiny, ironically, lore for this game was present already. I mean, already at launch, and was actually pretty deep in suggesting in things like simulation theory and things failing in it, which is technically a spoiler, but most of the people present are either here to have me make fun of a game that they don't really like and poke fun at it if they do like it, or just already know the plot, so I don't really think I'm going to lose sleep over that too much. But now, we get to the meat and potatoes, the Atlas Rises update. It was launched, as I said, about a year later from the original launch. It added a 24-hour to 30-hour story, and a whole bunch of new content revisions to existing systems in the game. This also was a key staple in adding a huge component, we'll say, of multiplayer, as it wasn't a complete form of multiplayer. However, you could interact with each other, and you could race each other, as stated earlier. This update was a very big benchmark in the way that your house actually is formed now, just missing a few things like a heater, table, or any furniture, but a benchmark nonetheless, for a few reasons. Notably, that the developers Hello Games were actually listening actively to their community and trying to make good on promises and their bad reputation from a year prior. There were still notably a few problems with this update, however, such as the stability still being comparable to the Tacoma Narrow Bridge, and an endgame loop that consisted of mainly watching plants grow or waiting for plants grow at this point to be the most efficient. And as I said, you were meant to be exploring and things like that, and that's another positive that this update had, which is it added a whole bunch of new textures and planet layouts to explore. That being said, again, you were still mainly waiting for those plants to grow at home, so. As for auxiliary things to do in between that meta, as I said, there were side missions added that consisted of go here, scan this, go here, repair this, and go here, kill yourself. Arguably not the most mentally engaging missions, again, they're more missions, not quest systems, but they served their purpose, and there was enough of them with sometimes varying and added objectives to certain ones that would keep you from getting too bored too quickly. They also added actual side quests, like side quests with stories to them, for the cardboard that was the specialists and that you could hire in your base from the previous Foundation update. And they're actually pretty engaging and pretty good for those that actually are willing to read the quest lines for them. Without spoiling too much, each of the specialists has some fucked up past and equally fucked up future that you, of course, have the wonderful pleasure of learning about and experiencing. Maybe as a pseudo way of the dev team reaching out to their community and any other players that were coming in at this point. This would in turn lead us to the actual meat part of this update, which was the story mode. A very symbolic and somewhat thought-provoking story about the Atlas and its shortcomings as a god. I'd say your character as well, but we'll get into that in a moment. Here's where a lot of people tend to have differing opinions that have played the game. I, for one, do not assign to the idea that the story itself is very bad. I agree that it's needlessly convoluted and told very poorly, which arguably you could make the statement that that's how a story is conveyed, therefore the story cannot be that good if it's conveyed badly, which, again, you can definitely take that argument. Knowing some of the direct comparisons it tries to make with things like the Bible, ironically kind of like the Bible in a way, with the way it's needlessly convoluted and things like that, the story is littered with references of it. And unfortunately, there's one major flaw with this story, which I and many others have pointed out that actually still do enjoy the story of the game. In any story that's based around the narrative between two characters, your character interacting with other characters especially, it's very important to make sure that that character shows a wide range of emotions. Did you hear me? Wide range of Let me see if this right. Let's try that again. Okay, wide range of emotions. Take two. Okay, here's my problem. Considering that it seems like the personality candy bar was shared amongst all the main characters in this game, they seem to have given the worst slice or the least amount, probably none at all, to your main character. Probably as a way to make you be able to project onto the character, but they kind of fell in that aspect because your character constantly makes very dumb decisions or decisions that don't relate to what's happening in the story. For example, for as much as things in the story and characters have obsessions with numbers or things like the number 16 specifically, instigating loop 16, I won't exactly go into what that is, you'll have to find out yourself, or watch someone that is. The character you play as tends to not even really notice it's much of a big deal until towards the mid part of the story where everybody's already figured out what the loop means, or you as the character or as the player have figured out what loop 16 is meaning. Dumb decisions or shows about as much care as a person that is unironically screaming fake news at the sight of any opposing information. To put it bluntly, your character's situational awareness is similar to a frat boy in a retirement home. They make most of their comments that are just either completely off basis from what's happening around them when characters die or disappear, or somehow one of the simplest things stated will be taken by your character as gospel by the gods. Honestly, that's what's going to keep a lot of people from enjoying the story, is because your character has the personality of Roadkill. Actually, Roadkill has more personality than that, so. Overall, however, the update itself wasn't too bad, at least on consoles. I know on PC there's a lot of control problems. The main caveat of this being, for the sake of many people that already played the game, it was a breath of fresh air and a very long and large amount of content accessible. And for those that didn't play the game initially, there was at least a lot of stuff for them to enjoy and do. However, and there's a big however in air quotes here, there's a significant amount of bugs that still exist in the game at the present state, even after multiple patches after Atlas Rises. Such as multiple points where you'll fall through the map when getting out of a vehicle or something too quickly and the area hasn't rendered exactly perfectly. Or the frame rate that tends to make like a dubstep music remix on cocaine whenever you get anywhere close to a container or a large body of entities like items and such. With a decent groundworking, arguably not necessarily the best execution of that groundworking, we have the current state of No Man's Sky. Again, I'll state this, but all the updates that I've listed and the one that is currently coming, No Man's Sky Next, are all free. And apparently most of the future updates after that will be free as well. And it isn't too far-fetched to say that they had to add a lot of free content, or at least some decently sized updates, so that people would actually stay with the game considering how bad the launch was. However, one thing should be definitively clear to anyone who likes or dislikes the game, critiques or does not critique them. The developers of this game, and yes, that includes Sean Murray, you smartasses out there, definitively and significantly care about this game, regardless of sometimes they're not best showing of it. It is also very clear to me that even with the complaints and faults I find in the current state of the game, that it is significantly better than it was since launch. And I don't think that's a completely ungrounded or controversial opinion I just shared there. So, now that everyone is now caught up with the current loop of No Man's Sky, at least relatively, what can we expect in the next No Man's Sky update, notably called No Man's Sky Next? Well, Stay tuned for the next episode, where we talk about what I expect or what I would like to see in No Man's Sky next, as well as what we know about No Man's Sky next. Actually, I said that in the wrong order. Flip those two things. And with that, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next video.